you need to be doing something.
Mhm.
Like I know it's bad to say, but you almost need to keep them entertained because that's how they act. Is that they can't deal with free time or thinking time. They just can't because they won't do it.
So is that a byproduct of their experience, a byproduct of them being 14? Is that a byproduct of their upbringing? Is that a byproduct of lack of chemical inducement? I mean, why is that occurring?
Yes.
A lot of it, I think, too, is just the classroom dynamic in there. The way those kids are with those specific kids together, they kind of feed off each other almost. And yeah, I think that's where a lot of it comes from because they kind of get to choose where they sit. And when they sit by those kids that are a problem, they end up getting moved by the end of the class period or brought out into the hallway. And those kids who kind of sit by themselves, they're fine, So I just think it's a lot of that feeding off each other.
You actually mentioned yesterday, she's now worried a little bit about classroom management, which I think most of you are. And you really don't get anything about classroom management until you go through boot camp for PS2, PS3. How many of you just are scared to death? You got your content. You know how to teach. How many of you are just, what do I do when that kid does? How do I manage my class? How do I make sure that they like me? How do I do this and how do I do this? He's shaking his head no, but you've got some experience coming into that, right? How did you learn what to do?
I learned what to do by butting heads and yelling at kids and having them yell back at me.
Were you scared they weren't going to love you?
Oh yeah,
Oh, yeah.
right off the bat, definitely.
And how did you get over that?
Made a connection.
Yeah.
You just have to find something in common, and then when you can pique their interest, everything gets way better.
It is one of the fears because as first-year teachers, you guys really want the students to like you, don't you? I want them to like me. And if I get mad at them, they won't like me. It's a fallacy. It really, truly is. You have to be that. You don't have to be the hard nose. You don't have to be the, are you really shaking your head at me? You don't have to be that. But you do really have to maintain. Yeah.
How do you find that line between, not necessarily, I don't want to say be intimidating enough, but, to have them know that when you say something, you're going to follow through with it, and you don't just go, oh, I'm going to send you to the office, and then kind of, brush it away. But still being, likable enough for the kids to want to engage with you on your own time. Not even just you trying to be funny or entertaining in front of the class, but for them to still feel comfortable with you without feeling intimidated.
You want to chime in on this? Anybody else want to chime in on this? Go ahead. I don't hear who speaks. It's all good.
Well, make sure that initially in the class or initially in whatever setting you're in that you treat everybody equally, and if you do make a threat, that's something you have to go on. So before you make any threats, you really have to think about what you're going to do.
That breathable moment.
Yeah. Never go off on a whim. If some kid irritates you, don't just say what you're thinking immediately at them. Step back, take a deep breath, and think about it for a minute.
How
Can
do
I tell
you?
a story when I sub shop at the high school in here? Okay, so when I sub shop class all day one time. I've subbed afternoons a couple times there, but all day. And in the morning they built a house, so I can't help with that. So that was whatever. And a couple of them have shop in the afternoon then, and they said, well, I've got a project to work on. Okay, sure, we can do that. That's no big deal. So some kids are in this little classroom, and then a couple kids are in the shop, so I'm kind of back and forth. Well, at one point, some kid gets inside the giant vent they have. So when you spray paint stuff, and they're, these kids are kind of giggling, some idiot asshole has no idea this kid's in here. Well, I can hear him rattling around. So get out, and he wouldn't get out. And I said, all right, everyone back in the room. And eventually he crawls out. What's going on? Where's everybody at? I have no whatever. So then those same group of kids were in the afternoon, and they had already crossed the line, clearly. So that afternoon, I woodwork as a hobby, so I can help them. We're in the classroom. You're sitting down. You're in the classroom. You're not going to the shop. I don't care. And I absolutely put my foot down. And it worked, because I didn't have to worry about some kid cutting his hand off being an idiot. But the next time I subbed an afternoon, I was able to control those kids in a way that you you have a project, you can go out and work on it. They had to show me the project they were working on. They'd be like, oh, I'm working on a project, and go out and have nothing to do. No, back in the classroom. And they listened to me. So I really had to be a hard ass one time. And subs they're completely different. I mean,
Oh, they are.
we all remember when the sub came into the classroom, right?
Yeah, easy day.
The other story I have about sub, and I subbed for my mom a few times. She has a study hall, and there's this one kid that I kind of tutored some, so I kind of knew he was kind of not a great classroom management situation. He came in late with another buddy, and they go back, and he doesn't sit in his spot. And none of them really sit in their spots, and I didn't care. You know, they're not, as long as they're not killing each other and they're quiet, fine. It's study hall. They come in late, and they kind of sit back room by each other. I know this gentleman's supposed to sit up front because he's a troublemaker, and I marked him tardy, whatever. And then they high-five each other like they got away with something. I was gonna let it go. I didn't care. Whatever. They were tardy. No big deal. They can sit by each other. And they high-five each other like they got something over on me. Damn it! I gotta deal with this.
Right there.
So, up front, and then because he knew she was my mom, trying to embarrass me. When's your mom get back? I had no idea. Well, he
I
didn't know.
love
I'd
those
already
kids.
introduced myself. Everyone in the class knew that I was, you know, my mother's son. So, anyway, long story short, sometimes you just absolutely have to put your foot down.
You do.
And that, from what my mom's told me, from what I've talked to other people, that's just the beginning of the discipline. You gotta just, hard nosed as I am, the man, freaking listen to me.
And pick your battles. Pick your bet. You know, it's my first time that I had a sub, my very first year teaching, I came back and there were kids that were missing that we didn't have in class. And I was like, all right, so now I have to decide, is this something that has to be dealt with or is this kind of clever on their part? Because the sub had been there before. She'd seen the kids. But they were telling her that Tommy was gone and Sue was gone. I had this long list of kids who were missing in class. Well, they weren't in class because they aren't existent, right? So then you have to decide, is that something that you're really going to push? Did I address it? Absolutely. Is that something that you really need to hard nose about? Probably not. You know, and you have to, consistency is it. I like his statement about treating everybody the same. Equal is a better term there, but they're all different, right? So you do have to choose. If one person is chewing gum and you're going to get after him for that, you don't want gum in your class, but then you let the other one do it, you're setting yourself up for failure. You have to be consistent, and consistency your first month is key. And they're going to push your buttons first month. Poor Michaela was with my two yesterday. God bless her. She's sweet as a button, right? She would say something to one of the students, and she wouldn't even respond to her. Yeah. So we got in the car, and they were like, well, she was pretty cool. Like, okay. You didn't respond over the top. You didn't get mad at her for not responding to you. You didn't do anything. You just consistently kept putting your foot down a little bit. She just kept pushing the issue just a little bit. Not over the top. She didn't yell at her. She didn't say, talk to me. Look me in the eye. Show me what you're doing. She didn't do any of that. She just was persistent and consistent. And that worked. And tomorrow when she's there, they're going to treat her very differently than they did yesterday. And
I
that's
think-
kids.
I think even out at Elkton, just from the first day to the second day that I went out, the kids treat you so differently. Like, first you're just that kind of weird stranger in the classroom, and they're curious about you, but they don't want to talk to you. And then the next day, it's like, hi. It's like, oh, hi. Still don't remember you.
The biggest thing I can tell you is that kids today are not the same necessarily the kid tomorrow. And sometimes that 24-hour time period is a world. And kids who are really rambunctious in one class period and then the next class period, they sit there like a toad, that's normal. All of that is normal. As teachers, we tend to internalize that a little bit. We tend to do the whole, well, why aren't they reacting in my class like they are in this other class? It could be the time frame, could be that they're hungry, could be that somebody shut their locker door on them, it could be because they have to pee, who knows? It could be 1,012 different things. Consistency is key to classroom management. Keeping them busy is another thing. Yeah. Go ahead.
Another thing I've seen is sometimes the kids that are out to just really piss you off. If they do something, they're trying to get a certain reaction from you. So if you give them something not related to it at all, they'll stop. I ran Clubs Against Tobacco at the Boys and Girls Club Teen Center, and there was an 8th grader who was his first day back at the club after he went to military school. He's just a pissed off kid, just looking to just
Angry with the
destroy
world.
everyone.
Yeah.
And part of this Clubs Against Tobacco is I'm required by the Boys and Girls Club to give them a pretest that all the kids hate because they've all done it 10 times. So I hand this kid the test, and he just looks at me, flips me off.
Nice.
And I looked at him and like, he's been around me a little bit before, and like I've definitely like come down hard and punished those kids. And I looked at him and said, "Wow, that figure's longer than the other ones. That's really cool." And done. I was the only staff he respected. But I never had another problem.
Yeah.
So, does anybody see the story on Facebook about the kid that brought in the 3x5 note card for his test?
Was it a cheating situation or was it a?
He was allowed by a 3x5 note card, and the teacher never specified what measurement, so he brought in a 3 foot by 5 foot note card.
Awesome.
With all of his
I
notes
love
on
kids
it.
like that.
Yeah, and I was just reading about it because it was talking about like how would you react in this situation, and the teacher just said that all he did was look through every single one of like his notices and his notes and everything that he put up, and he said he never specified. He's like, I couldn't do anything about it, and why would I? Because that's freaking hilarious.
It's true.
I will say one thing though about Upton yesterday. The kid, those 8th graders, they know how their behavior like affects others though.
Yeah.
Because the one girl who was really disrespectful and practically like told him, "I don't care, I don't really want to learn right now,"
Yeah.
to the teacher, also is the same one 45 minutes later that said, "Everyone's behavior can affect everyone's learning around them." You know, like they know. I mean, so it's a pain in the butt as they are. They know. They
Yeah.
just don't care.
Yeah.
And for some reason, it's just not coming together. So, but yeah, they're smart. They know what.
Yeah.
You know, they know that they will affect others.
I think like the dynamic of the Upton room of like, because that I know exactly when both of those scenarios happen, and that is such a large room. So Kelsey's in this side,
Yeah.
she's teaching,
Yeah.
and when the girl was like, I don't care about learning, is when she was back here.
Yeah.
Then they flipped. Jeff was teaching. Then she was answering every question. She was so engaged, and so like,
And then
literally
this,
that
this group over here was.
and then this group was just being turds. And
Yeah.
like literally that dynamic of the classroom, just because of how they have to do it, being
Right.
literally 2 sizes long, it's so different.
Yeah.
Like you can just tell when they switch and like Kelsey is so sweet and so soft spoken. So like these kids in the back couldn't care less. Like the one boy was like, I can't hear anything you're saying, so I don't care. Like he literally like I don't care to learn right now, and it's just like, oh my word.
It's funny you
He
say
knows
that.
he can move
Yeah.
up.
Yeah,
He
they
just
know
doesn't have
they do. Like they know they have that option, but like in their head, they are in the back of the room. And they are not moving from the back of the room.
It's funny you hear that because I get to hear the stories, and about half of them come in talking about how Kelsey's so soft spoken, and about half come in and say that she's really a snark, and then about half come in and say that Jeff's a snark and Jeff's so soft spoken. It's hilarious, the perceptions of the moment in which you're seeing them and those kinds of things. It's hilarious.
They don't
I
seem
think.
to have as much respect for Kelsey as they do.
Why do you suppose that is?
I would agree.
I don't know if I've seen that, so I'm curious about that.
All I know is what I've heard from my siblings who have had her as a teacher, so I don't want to necessarily get into that. I don't know her very
Yeah,
well.
no, don't. Yeah.
But it really doesn't seem like they have as much respect. And I don't know, maybe when I'm there more the next couple weeks here,
Does he
I'll
coach?
see them.
He used to. Yeah, like 20-some years of coaching.
We
Like they're-
said the same thing.
Yeah.
We noticed it too.
But I wonder too how much of that has to do with and I've had to have a conversation with him, and some of you may notice that he's starting to feel protective over Kelsey, and he will do some of the disciplining when they will do something to her that's disrespectful. And I told him, I said, you have to back off. And he never did that to me I can't say he never did that to me in the classroom, but I'm his wife, so I could say back off, and she doesn't quite feel comfortable enough to get to tell him to get the heck out of there.
Get angry.
There's definitely sexist.
Oh, absolutely. You won't be in a classroom where there isn't that dynamic. You're going to have guys who, if it's a coach who's in front of the classroom, they're going to be different than if it was the volleyball coach. So if the football coach is teaching them and the volleyball coach is teaching them, you're going to have a very different dynamic there as well, whether it's the girls or the boys. You cannot get away from that. It's just the reality of the classroom.
But that,
Yeah.
I think that really just lends to the idea that the relationship matters. I mean, you watch the way a coach interacts with one of his student
Yeah.
athletes. I mean, he'll poke at him, he'll tease
Yeah.
him, and it's nothing. But you know, you do that to someone who's not one of their athletes, then it's kind of like the end of the world for that student.
Yeah.
And yeah, like so I've been there twice now, and like honestly, both days were like not great class management.
Oh, because you're 8th grade. Yeah.
And they've had like both
Yeah.
days that I've been there, they've had to like we haven't like done anything with the students because it's been like we need to figure this out. Like we need
Yeah.
to
Mhm.
talk about
Yeah.
classroom management. And
Yeah.
one thing I pointed out to Katie yesterday is because we noticed like the respect thing too with Jeff and Kelsey. And one thing I noticed like Jeff, like he'll get after them and he'll say what he needs to say to them, and then like literally 2 minutes later he's like making a joke with them.
Mhm.
So like he's not when he is, because it's so weird because sometimes he's up there and he's like so strict and I'm like I'm scared. And then after he talks to me and he's just like nice to me and I'm like heck. So like in my head I'm like, okay, you are totally bluffing as you're acting mad. You are frustrated. I know you're frustrated, but like you're not mad at these kids because like again 2 seconds later he's making a joke with the same kid. And so like whereas like Kelsey, I don't know if she separates that as much. Like if she's mad, she's mad. And like
He's had 29 years of training, so
well and
being
like
married to me.
I think like her, like I was like, oh my gosh, I don't even know how you would be
Yeah.
responding right now because these kids are just being.
It's
Very
definitely classroom management, and you're absolutely correct. Relationship is the key. It doesn't. I mean, you can do certain things to certain kids at certain times, and it's all dependent upon your relationship with that student at that particular moment. But do not kid yourselves; those relationships are not built overnight. They are built on time and lots of hard work. I know we really stress in PS1, PS2, even in PS3, those relationships. And you can spend the first week doing all these kumbaya moments. That's not building that relationship other than, and it's just time and it's trust. I don't care if your students ever like you a day in their life, they have to trust you. And that is the relationship key. Because you are literally parents to them in some regard. And you all know that there were times your parents had to bring the hammer down on you, unless you were a perfect child. But you knew your parents still loved you and you knew you had to trust them. So I kind of equate it to Shelby. Shelby loves Slim much more than me. I'm not her human. She'll tolerate me. But when I say no, she has to trust me that I'm doing something in her best interest. But there are times where I'll get down on the floor and try to play with her and stuff, and she'll just go over and lay at his feet. So she doesn't like me sometimes, but she has to know that when I tell her something, that's what's going on. And that is built up over time. Huge amounts of time. Yeah. There are kids. That's all they are. They're a hoot. Yeah. I love watching the students. I love, like watching Tegan with you yesterday was hilarious. Because Ben loved her. Again, there's that male and female dynamic as well. Ben really, he goes to the females a little bit more than he does to the males, which is hilarious to me. Yeah, he does. Yeah. So, time. That's all you can do. Take those experiences. They're good experiences. And don't obsess on them. I know that's really hard, but you do. Like, I asked Tanner, how long have you guys, those of you who were there on Monday, how long have you spent over the last 2 days thinking about that 8th grade class? No, Katie's like,
We kind of got it hashing out when we were driving. So.
oh, awesome. It's why I like a drive. We were talking, I don't remember who I was talking with yesterday about you. It was you, right? Stephanie, do they treat you differently because of your chair?
Well, she just asked that too. Yeah, the 2 times I've been there, we haven't done anything with
Right,
the
right.
kids. So we haven't like interacted with the kids a lot.
Okay.
The first day they were presenting,
Uh-huh.
and then yesterday was all classroom management things. And so I haven't noticed completely.
I'm going to be curious to see if they treat you differently.
Yeah,
Has anybody asked?
no, which is also interesting.
I would have been that one. It's
I
like,
totally
dude, what happened?
That by now. No one has.
Especially with middle school, they're
Yeah.
much more apt to.
I know.
kind of
Absolutely.
upfront
There's
about
no
that.
filter in their lives, so
Yeah.
yeah, that's what's going on there with them. All right.
They seem pretty into each other right now.
They don't really care about we're there.
I'll be curious. Football is happening right now. There's more students who are involved in basketball, and behaviors tend to change when basketball starts because if they lose their eligibility. We'll see if that happens. It's an unfortunate byproduct of that. I'm not a big fan of it, but that's the way it is in a lot of schools. So you lose your eligibility if you don't have a certain GPA, kind of a thing. I don't know. We'll see. Anybody else want to share anything? Go ahead.
I just had a question. Can we talk about like creative punishments? And I know that sounds really macabre, but my stepmom was talking about how they have some sort of system in their school, and basically they just really keep track of the troublemaking kids, so to speak, and seeing like where they're acting up, why they're acting up consistently, trying to figure out what causes them to freak out in their study hall, or what caused them to get angry in their math class, and what's the punishment from it? Like, well, do they get out of class every time they start crap? You know, are they just doing this to get out of math class? And if so, what do you do about that to make sure that they're still in trouble without just sending them away, and making sure that they're going to pay attention and do what needs to be done? And I don't want kids that are just trying to get out of class.
Oh, but that's their goal.
I know.
Yeah, it's teachers' goal too. It's like, cool, snow day. It happens, right? I can tell you honestly from my experience, I've never seen a punishment that has worked. Because you're punishing, that's not changing the behavior.
I feel like in a sense, like you will recognize who are the troublemakers, but if you like really, really focus in that and identify them as troublemakers and don't like see them as a person, like they'll make that connection that you're like,
Right.
oh yeah, you know I'm a troublemaker. Like you need to see them as an individual, even though they're
Exactly.
crappy at times.
And every day has to be a new day
Like
in
see
their
something
world.
good in them each day.
Yeah.
Like something.
Oh, I know. I'm just saying if they do something that's just crazy or outrageous because you know they're trying to get out of like doing an exam or doing something that's important that they just don't want to do.
I had a student fall asleep during their semester test once. I just let him sleep.
It's punishment enough.
It was.
Yeah, I mean,
It worked
they
really
never
well.
have to do it.
Yeah, they didn't have to do it. They got a 0. I mean,
My mom was telling me about a student she had. He was one of those kids that just had a temper. He always had, and she had him, all through high school. And by the time he was like a junior or senior, she could tell when he was starting to get frustrated and angry about something, and she would just look at him and say, "Are you going to do something to get yourself in trouble? If so, step out of the classroom."
Yeah.
And she gave him that choice.
Yeah.
And there were times he took it. He just walked out.
Yeah.
And he would always come back. But she had gotten to know this kid well enough that she's like, she doesn't want to be the bad guy. So she's like, if you're going to get yourself in trouble, just step out, take
Yeah.
a breath.
we had that rule as well. Before you get to that point, you need to remove yourself from the situation. But that's a maturity thing as well. 7th, 8th grade, they may not recognize that in themselves yet, but yeah, it's the same thing we had. Just you have to take control of yourself. That's the reality of that. Detentions don't work. Most kids want to stay after school. They really don't care if they're there.
Unless they're in sports or something. Like my mom would give football boys detention sometimes, and then their coach.
I was
made them
going to say,
run
I bet their
because of
coach
that,
made her
'cause they
visit.
missed part of practice.
Did the coach visit her?
My stepmom said that she had a kid kind of like that with a bad temper, and she said whenever she started seeing that he was about to get riled up, like she would ask him to do some nonsense chore, like, oh, I need you to drop these files off at the office or whatever, and she said they'd be empty, but it would just give him a chance to get out and clear his head and get kind of in that zone before he came back.
A lot of you will find administrators, especially your first year, knowing you're a first year teacher, they'll tell you, just send them to me and I will take care of them. And you need to never do that, because then you're just they know right away. It's like dad, wait till dad gets home and you're going to be in trouble. It never works for mom. So don't fall into that trap. Just deal with stuff the way you want to deal with it.
So
You'll all figure it out.
I've got the worst situation my dad ever had. His first year teaching. Obviously we don't do this, but it's worth telling. He had a student who was a problem, and he'd send him to the office. Next day, sent him to the office again, but he didn't go. So the third day, he was escorting this young man to the office, and the kid looks at my dad and says, "I know where you live. I know who your wife is. I know who your kids are. I know where they sleep.
Nice.
And before he finished that sentence, his head was through a locker.
Awesome.
I think so too, to be completely honest. But the reason I tell that story is that kind of crap will happen. I mean, there are kids that are just sadistic enough that will literally tell you something like that. And so I'm so glad my dad's told me that story, because if I didn't know that story beforehand, I would put a kid's head in the locker, knowing who I am.
Yeah,
So
that's a
I think
bad thing to do.
I've got that image in my head. I can already deal with that situation before it comes up. And that's, and of course, you know, Dad was told that it was 1992, so a little more lenient.
A little bit.
If you do it again, obviously, you're going to lose your job. The administration told them.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's his first year. It was like week 6 or 7 of him teaching his
Nice.
first year, so it was.
Bet he remembers the trigger, too. What it was that got him, that tipped him from here to there.
Yeah, well, you know, he was frustrated with the kid, and then he, threatened his family, so that's kind of you're gonna die situation.
So another interesting kind of twist on this is there's something I dealt with a lot at the Boys and Girls Club was dealing with kids that are on IEPs and having them set off kind of the bad kids. Like I had a girl that she's too young for an official diagnosis, but I mentored her. I was her one-on-one Boys and Girls Club mentor, and she had either schizophrenia or multiple personalities. I think it was more multiple personality, but during one of her bad days, she would just stand up and yell, "F you, I hate you, I want you all to die,"
Awesome.
during the middle of the class, just out of nowhere. And then just like personality switch, and she'd be like, "Oh," and just sit back down and just be happy. And that would set off, of course, all the kids. So learning kind of how to deal with balancing IEP kids
Yeah.
and then the kids that are just trying to screw up your day is really rough.
I love it.
There's not really a good way to deal with that at all. Besides just try to make a joke, skip past it.
Yeah, that's the only way I can think to deal with that is try to crack a joke about it to just lower the tension.
You could.
Yeah.
Yeah. Kids, but the kids around him are pretty resilient too.
Mhm.
Yeah, discipline. I don't know. I'm short-lived with my anger towards anybody. It's like try to figure out what's going on, try to resolve it, and go from there. Timing's the other thing. You have two kids who are like battling with each other, whether or not you intervene, when you intervene, how much you intervene, those kinds of things. Because usually they'll just figure it out. So you have to keep it contained. But you know, we've only had one fight my 22 years of high school that I taught. One fight, and we let them fight. Because it was two gentlemen, and guys, you know how you fight? You kick the crap out of each other, and you pick each other up, and then you're like going out for supper that night. Girls, very different dynamics. We like to, I don't know, we hold on to things, and then it goes to social media, and then it's just a messy situation with girls. But
You guys let them fight?
yeah, we did.
How
At
long
our
was
school,
that?
they always pulled each
A
other.
couple minutes.
How long ago?
Oh, so it had been 2009.
When I was in high school, it was always so dumb that people would pick fights with each other because they would do it right in front of like 5 staff members.
Mhm.
So they immediately get pulled off of each other. And it's
Oh,
like
no,
you just didn't
yeah.
want to fight. You would just wait until you got off the bus at the same place where you guys both lived.
Yeah.
But you wait until it's like a safe place. So I was like, let them fight because they're going to stop and just
They
be like,
will,
oh, this
yeah.
is stupid.
There's going to be a winner. All good experiences. Reflect on those things. Figure out what you would do in those situations. You're out there, you're watching your CE do something, you're watching the students in the class do something. Figure that out. That's what we want you to reflect on. What would you do if you were that teacher? Because, as I keep reminding some of you, in 6 months, you're going to have your own contracts. And then you have to make those decisions without a crutch. And sometimes that can be scary. Easy enough? All right, you all have a rough outline of your teaching lesson for next Tuesday, next Monday. Get those, and I want you to find somebody who is not in this group. You need to find the actual document. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, I'll catch up in just a second, because a couple of you are gone. Dun, dun, dun. These are, and this is coming up here soon, are the groups that you will be teaching in. Forever known as Group 1, Group 2, Group 3, and Group 4. Oh, I hate old tech. Are you utilizing technology in your lessons that you're teaching in the field? All right, those are your groups. So, find people who are not in your group and have them critique your lesson. Figure out what is good. Do they have objectives? Do they have measurable objectives? Do they have an activity? Have they thought about how they're going to assess? How are they going to know? So just find somebody who's not in your group. Do you all know each other? You should all know each other by this point. Yes? Okay. Try to find somebody who's not in your content area, not to point out the macro. I know it. All right, go. Go. Have someone critique your lesson. You. Someone that's not in your content.
What's your
Riley?
Yeah, let's do it.
I actually pick one of
Awesome. So if you look at the hard things, I teach how to catch a frisbee.
So when Ashley found out
Maybe I know I'll probably just go. I've got a couple of those things that go like a lot. They're harder to throw. I've got. I borrowed two frisbees from my dad, like the full size. So throwing them in here might use the damage. We have gold measurables, way I'm gonna
without telling them about
throw a frisbee without making two steps, throw a frisbee with a curve, throw a frisbee without a curve, throw a frisbee in a way other than what is natural. Catch 4 out of 5 frisbees. They're known to use less than 5. Would be able to take less than 2 steps. Catch 3 out of 5 frisbees if you have to take more than 2 steps or down. Yeah. Don't have to be perfect. Resources. Need space. So what's your goal? Nope. No, these are just kind of like, I guess, what I thought of for learning objectives. That would be measurable. Which is why I have like 4 out of 5, 3 out of 5 catches. And then number of steps. As far as how you're catching it. What do you have for objectives?
Try to best in this.
Alright, so for actually trying that. But like in the Army, when you do this setup, you can't lift your butt above the ground. So you have someone hold your feet, and if you lift your butt up and hold, like you're trying to get like more momentum going up, and that one doesn't count. So put your butt on the ground, and you can either have you arch crossed, go up, and you're gonna touch your elbows to the knees. So your knees are kind of bent to 45-degree angles. Come up, touch your elbows to your knees, go back down. And one is when your shoulder blades touch the ground.
How come you're not up there, Trevor?
So starting position is you're laying flat on the ground, knees up, someone's holding your feet, shoulder blades are on the ground. Go up, one, touch your knees with your elbows and go back down. When your shoulder blades touch the ground, that's one. If your butt came up, then
There you go. Let's put you in. Let's put you in two. Two.
I've done a lot of push-ups and sit-ups in my life, so.
I didn't realize they're hard.
They suck. I don't know if they do them anymore. They're too hard on your body. You used to do it where you had your hands behind your head. People were pulling their necks out of whack because they're trying to pull themselves up as hard as they could.
Yeah. So that's not the proper way. What else do we have? If you don't want somebody,
Well, if you don't need someone on your feet, if you don't have anything holding your feet down, you won't be able to get your feet on the ground. It's like impossible.
no way, I just did.
Did you really?
Yeah, that's awesome. I was trying. I was like, I need to figure out how to do this. Okay, but generally,
And then
comes down.
there's different ways to hold feet too. Like in the military, you have to keep your heels on the ground. So you can have your feet flat, or you can have them tipped up, but your heel has to stay on the ground. So if someone's holding your feet, by the toes, and you put more stress on, your muscles right here. Because you're coming up, you're kind of stressing this part. But if they put their hands here, you can tip your feet up. And a lot of that's personal preference, but.
You can see three large numbers.
So yeah,
It's not that
I don't know, I think that's okay. That's all just fine.
okay.
That's what you know, because if your feet don't have to be on the ground, you can literally almost bring your knees up to your chest and just rock yourself up. So leaving your
Becomes like a crunch.
yeah.
I thought we were gonna drag, so you're not everybody's gonna be hammer toss or
Well, we're gonna do the I'm gonna actually let everyone just throw one and see what their natural. Some people throw naturally hip throw. Yeah. Well, I guess I always feel like that because my dad did it. I saw him throw a frisbee like that one time. I thought it was cool. So I always threw a frisbee like that. Well, like I said, I'm gonna let them all see what their natural way is, but it's gonna be like that. So we'll just have it be like that.
I love frisbee.
Used to.
Ultimate.
I never really played ultimate. I just like throwing things. I mean, I really like ultimate frisbee, but I've never had a group do it.
How's it going over here?
It's good.
It's good. Measurable? You were having a hard time with that the other day.
Yeah, I'm still having a hard time.
How do you know it's going to be their best? What are they going to do to demonstrate to you it's their best?
Your face is being red.
Good do that. Are you a sports guy? All right. What's going on? Baseball, right? I think we talked about something like that. How do you know when the pitcher's pitch is going to be strike before it ever crosses the plate? You're the batter. You know it, right? What are you watching for? What's the pitcher doing? You're not a pitcher, are you? What position do you play? Awesome. How do you know that your shortstop's going to actually snag the ball? You're the coach now. How do you know that's going to occur?
I mean, if he's getting his glove,
Those are tangible things. Here, you just have do your best. And does your coach say, "Nice game, Riley, you did your best"? No, they go into the locker and they're like, "What the hell? Get your glove dirty." That's something that's tangible. Okay? How's yours?
I have a lot of objectives.
Do you?
That are measurable.
Oh.
This was before. This is
Wow.
after.
I know you're married to a doctor, but this is ridiculous.
I know it's terrible.
No, it's okay.
Throw a frisbee that can be caught without having to take more than 2 steps.
You know what though? Is yours about throwing a frisbee? Devil's advocate?
Throw
Oh,
and
throw
catch
and
it.
catch. Okay.
Throw a frisbee with a curve. Throw a frisbee without a curve. Throw a frisbee in a way other than what's natural.
Ooh, interesting. How
So
will
this
you know
one-
this?
They're gonna throw it a different way.
Yeah, we know, but how will you know that?
That it's not natural.
Yeah.
The assumption will be that they do their natural way to begin with.
Oh, it's a tough assumption.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
This is the only one that is it's on that borderline.
I mean, I can make it measurable by saying a different way,
Yes, you could.
because it would be different.
Correct.
Here, then catch 4 to 5 frisbees without having to take more than 2 steps. Catch 3 to 5 frisbees if you have to take more than 2 steps, or no.
I love it. I love it. I love it. All right. Are we good? Do we need more time?
2 frisbees.
All right. So, really quickly, get with your groups.
Where's my groups?
Who is your groups?
Maria.
Go find your groups. And Trevor is joining group 2.
Actually,
I like it back here, I know that.
Let's just go up in this order.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. It's a very quick little thing here. No, he's group 2. He is now. He's A. And I completely screwed him over and took him off my list. Yeah.
Okay, I was so confused, I was like,
We're
I'm
good?
sorry, but your name is
You should decide your order. And this isn't something you have to share with me. You just decide who's going first and who's going second. All right? And I can tell you this, group 1 and group 3 are going to teach on Monday. And then on Wednesday, group 2 and group 4 are going to teach. Okay? Keep in mind as well, Ashley will not teach on Monday, regardless of what group she's in, and neither will Maria. Because they weren't here, so we're catching them up. Okay? Go, decide. And it's only something your group needs to know, not me. It's for your present, your idea, not mine.
Wait, so are we teaching the class or
Just your people. Yeah, just you guys. Also, Trevor's going to teach to you.
Other people.
Jake's going to teach to you.
That's what I just overheard that we're just teaching to our group.
Oh, number C is I was confused that one group 1 and you're gonna go on number 1. Like you're 1 and I'm 4, so I'm gonna go like 2 and 4. Maria and I are gonna go on 1.
Deciding who's going.
Oh, yeah. I was never like yeah.
Oh.
They
Go first.
You guys got an order?
1, 2.
Well, I don't need to know. You guys just need to know.
Yeah, I'm supposed to. I'm supposed to go outside, ideally, if the weather works. So either
Yeah.
I can go first. I pretty much have it together.
Are we good? So everybody will be prepared? You all know who's teaching? Okay, so on Monday, who's teaching? Which groups? Monday, which groups are teaching? 1 and 3. Two. Okay, ready? Okay, ready? Everybody listen. So group 1 is going to teach to group 1, and whoever is in group 2 and 4 will split those up. So you're going to teach 2, right? So group 1 is going to teach to group 1. Just pretend that that's there.
Okay.
Group 3 is also going to teach on Monday, specifically to group 3. The other part that you are not aware of yet is group 2 is going to be listening to one of the other groups as that reflective teacher. Group 4 is going to be listening to one of the other groups as that reflective teacher. Somebody who's not a student, but a teacher. Then on Wednesday, group 2 and group 4 are going to teach to each other, and then group 1 and group 3 will act as that teacher who's observing, not the student. Does that make more sense? Everybody's good?
Yes.
Awesome. Life is?
Okay, now.
There you go. And then I'm done with you. Don't forget that on Friday we are in 119 Biostress. We are not in Winona. Okay? Yes, that's good to know, isn't it? We would be wondering where Maria was on Friday because Mrs. Schneider forgot to say something.